back? We're back? Okay, so thank you for bearing with me. That didn't actually take as much longer as I thought it might. The stuff has been blended. Do you want to see the lovely blend of tofu and spinach? So what we're going to do is use this. We're going to add some edamame peas, and we're going to add some little pieces of broccoli, which are chopped up here. So when you're making lasagna, you start with marinara sauce. It is highly important to minimize sodium whenever possible. You need some, your body needs some for fluid balance, obviously, but it's really easy to go overboard on sodium because it's in everything, and most people don't even realize that. So get as low of a sodium marinara sauce as you can. If it were summer and if I could get fresh local tomatoes, I might consider making my own. It's really pretty easy to do, but it's not. It's 37 degrees outside and tomatoes are harder to find. So we'll put the measurements. This is probably about a half cup in the bottom of the pan just to get it nice and goopy so the noodles cook through. Let me get first a paper towel and then just a spoon to spread it out. And just like everything else in my life, there is really no rocket science to any of this. You just sort of get the bottom of the pan wet. So that's step one. Step two is the noodles. Go with, again, as low sodium as possible and as few ingredients as possible. You want whole wheat if possible in order to reduce the glycemic index of the food. That's essentially the sugar load of it. Some people overlap their noodles. I don't know if you can get a shot of that. I generally don't because I don't think it really needs a whole lot more of the noodles. What you do is you put down a layer of that, then a spoon of the green stuff. That is exactly what my kids would call it if they were here to see this. So you want to use about half of your green stuff, which is just tofu and spinach. Tofu is a wonderful thing. As you get more and more into plant-based cooking, if you so choose, you will find that tofu is an excellent source of both calcium and iron. It is not a super overwhelming flavor. It doesn't have a whole lot of taste to itself. It instead tends to absorb the flavor of the stuff with which it's cooked. So it's a really nice ingredient to use in dishes where you're essentially compensating for cheese. It's great in stir fries. It's great as a meat substitute, if you'll believe that. A lot of people are very pleasantly surprised when they start trying to incorporate more and more plant-based cooking. It's not so much, well, in my opinion, it's less of a self-imposed limitation as it is, this is going to sound fruity, but it's kind of like opening a door to a whole new, I don't want to say world, but a whole new set of tastes to which I personally had not been exposed as a kid growing up. There's a whole lot of stuff you can do with it. It's, in my opinion, a lot more fun to cook this way, and I actually prefer it. I honestly prefer this kind of food. I prefer cooking knowing that there's less sodium, there's less sugar, there's less saturated fat, there's less of a lot of the bad stuff. I prefer knowing that I'm getting a lot of the vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants that you tend to get in heavily plant-based diets. I'm adding a little bit of broccoli, by the way, and to me the taste is actually superior. I actually prefer this. Now, does that mean I never eat animal products ever? No, of course not. The holidays are coming up. Chances are very high I'm going to get into the Christmas cookies sooner or later. It was Halloween not too long ago. I got into that a little bit. But when I'm cooking stuff, I genuinely prefer cooking this way. I'm sprinkling some edamame peas on top. So if, lovely assistant, you want to get a picture of this? This is instead of a giant splat of ricotta cheese, mozzarella cheese, and ground whatever kind of meat. So give this a try. I suspect you will be pleasantly surprised at how this turns out. So now we just repeat the process. Put another layer of sauce on top. Usually you go through about 1 jar of marinara sauce for a pan of lasagna, so just a portion it, kind of eyeball as best you can. Spread it out with a spoon. Now, if I were smarter, I would have been preheating the oven to about 350 degrees during this time. The idea is you fill this up depending on how much of this is fresh versus frozen. If you have fresh spinach, as I did, you're probably going to want to cook it for about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. If you have frozen spinach, frozen edamames, frozen whatever, add a little bit of time to that so it cooks through and is nice and warm when you're done. So we have that. We have goopy hands, so I'll be a little careful with the noodles. Another layer of noodles. Then we go with a little bit of goo. I'm probably going to try and fit the rest of it on top. Food processors are a blessing and a curse. They're really nice for mixing stuff up, but it's always a pain to get all the stuff around the edges. Nevertheless, it can be done. This is probably a, I would guess, 15-minute dish. As far as prep time, it takes an hour in the oven, and then you want to let it set for probably 10 to 15 minutes once you're done. So end to end, count on an hour and a half, but it's really only about 15 minutes of prep and then a little bit of cleanup when you're done. So we're going to spread around this stuff. Now, as you may be able to tell, I am not exactly a professional chef or a food artist, and I mention that only to mention that if I can do this, anybody can do this. All right, so we have that. Now we're going to go with a little bit more broccoli. I had some extra spinach in the thing just to give it a little bit of extra texture. Most of it I ground up, but I like to add a little bit of texture to food. It just seems to make it nicer. We'll add some edamames, carefully measured. Spread them around. Then we're going to top it off. A little bit more sauce. Probably do another layer of noodles. And then, if you really want to give it a little bit of a cheesy feel, we'll use the rest of the sauce on the top. And I'll mush this down a little bit to make it flat. Here's another trick. If you really like the flavor of cheese, as many people do, even though, as I mentioned before, cheese is incredibly high in sodium, it is incredibly high in saturated fat, and because it's not that cheese so much is, the worst food in the world, it's just that we as Americans tend to eat a whole awful lot of it. But the flavor is outstanding, and it's difficult to replace unless you are a little bit sneaky and try stuff like this, which is nutritional yeast. This is essentially vitamin B12 for vegans. It is it's powdery stuff. You can get it in the bulk bins at your store. It comes in bags too. If you go to the organic sections, it's often there. We're going to put a little bit of this on top. It has kind of a Parmesan cheesy taste to it once it's cooked. Not quite the same, but it's good. So that will add a little bit of cheesy flavor. I'm going to put some edamames on top just to make it pretty and because I like them. That is ready to go in the oven. 350. There's not much frozen stuff in here. This is going to be awesome when it comes out. I'll take a still of it and put it on the website. About an hour, 350. Let it set for 10 minutes and enjoy. So give it a try. Let me know in the comments if you don't agree that this is delightful. You may or may not prefer it to regular sort of meat and cheese lasagnas, but there's only one way to find out. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks for watching.